You wake up in a palace made of bones. 45,000 warriors stand against 130,000. The date is the morning of February 28th, 1046 BCE. Jupiter climbs to its highest point in the sky. Within hours, the oldest confirmed dynasty in Chinese history will cease to exist. The mandate of heaven itself is about to change hands. This is not myth. This is the Battle of Muye, where a rebellion smaller than a modern city's police force shattered an empire that sacrificed 300 humans at a time to gods who demanded blood. Royal tombs holding hundreds of bronze vessels. One tomb alone, that of Lady Fu Hao, contained 1,900 burial objects, including 468 bronze pieces and 755 jade items. She commanded 13,000 troops in life. In death, 16 humans and 6 dogs joined her in the ground. This was normal. At Yinshu, archaeologists found over 134 burial pits near a single palace complex. Each pit held decapitated victims. Sacrificial ceremonies claimed 50 people on average. One ritual killed at least 339. Over 13,000 sacrificed across 2 centuries at this one location. Oracle bone inscriptions from the site, over 150,000 pieces discovered so far, record the questions asked before cutting throats. Will the harvest succeed? Will the king's toothache fade? Will we win the battle? The Shang wrote on turtle shells and ox shoulder blades. They carved the question, heated the bone until it cracked, read the pattern, recorded the answer. This is the earliest substantial Chinese writing we possess, not legends passed down, not later reconstructions. Actual words from 3,000 years ago telling us the Shang kings asked their ancestors for permission before they killed. King Dixin took the throne around 1075 BCE. The Shang called him Dixin, meaning God, King Xin. The Zhou who destroyed him gave him the posthumous name Zhou, meaning horse crupper, the part of a saddle most soiled by the animal. His given name was Zhou. Sima Qian wrote 8 centuries later that Dixin had abilities surpassing ordinary men. Quick-witted, strong enough to hunt wild beasts barehanded. He expanded Shang territory east into modern Shandong, Zhejiang, Jiangsu, and Fujian provinces. Coastal regions under centralized control for the first time in recorded Chinese history. He promoted commoners and former slaves to official positions, stripping power from hereditary nobles. Progressive economic policies, agricultural development. This alienated the aristocracy. His older brother Weizi, who many officials preferred for the throne since his mother was an imperial concubine while Dixin's mother was the proper queen, fled to the Zhou. Nobles followed. They were unsatisfied with a king who elevated humble people over bloodlines. The roasting beam punishment, where criminals walked across heated metal until their feet burned through. His consort Daji supposedly invented this to satisfy her sadism. Wang Chong, a Han Dynasty scholar writing in Lunheng around 80 CE, already questioned these accounts. Pool of wine narratives unreliable. During the Southern Song, scholar Luo Mi reviewed documents and concluded allegations against Dixin were largely exaggerated. Modern archaeology at the Deer Terrace Pavilion site found a pool at the structure's base used purely for water storage and sanitation. No wine. The story of Dixin ripping out his uncle Bai Gan's heart appears in spring and autumn period texts as a confrontation resulting in death. The heart removal detail appears much later in Warring States fables. Extra details added to reinforce tyranny. With continuous excavation at Yinshu, backed by oracle bones and bronze ware, the modern academic community increasingly questions the traditional portrayal. Dixin might have been an ambitious king who prospered his kingdom but ultimately failed due to conspiracy and betrayal. Or he might have been exactly what Zhou records claim. We have the bones, we have the inscriptions, we have evidence of mass sacrifice. We cannot separate what Dixin actually did from what his enemies needed him to have done. Ji Li's son, Jichang, inherited the title Earl of Zhou, the Shang king. Di, Dixin's father, tried to repair relations through marriage. The Zhou lord pretended to comply while preparing revenge. When Dixin took power, Zhou had been planning vengeance for decades. Jichang, later honored as King Wen, consolidated western territories. He mediated quarrels between regional lords, defeated incursions by Quanrong raiders from the northwest, conquered the state of Mixu, built alliances. His reputation grew. Dixin noticed. Around 1100 BCE, slandered by the Duke of Chong, Jichang was arrested on treason charges and imprisoned at Yuli, modern Tangin, in northernmost Henan. This period. Jichang spent years confined. His eldest son, Bo Yikao, went to plead for his freedom. He was executed by Lingqi, death by 1,000 cuts, and according to one account, his flesh was made into meatballs and fed to Jichang. The father ate to show submission. Whether this happened, or whether Zhou propaganda invented it later to justify their war, we cannot confirm. What we know from multiple sources is Jichang was imprisoned. During confinement, He took the 8 trigrams and combined them into 64 hexagrams, the I Ching, the Book of Changes. He wrote interpretations for each. This divination manual, different from Shang bone cracking, would shape Chinese philosophy for 3 millennia. After several years, Jichang gained his freedom when Zhou people paid ransom. A beautiful girl, a fine horse, 4 chariots. He was made Viscount of the West, Shibo, and resided at Chiyi, near modern Baoji in Shanxi. He held back invasions, he expanded territory, he planned. He died in 1050 BCE before his plans bore fruit. 4 years later, his second son, Ji-Fa, posthumously King Wu, would finish what the father started. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Zhou Chronology Project, published by the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in 2000, the records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian, oracle bone inscriptions catalogued in the Academia Sinica collection in Taiwan, representing 1/5 of total discoveries, including the 17,096 piece H1. 7 pit, excavated in 1936, and the Ligui bronze vessel excavated in 1976 at Lintong District, Shanxi, with 32 character inscription recording the exact day of battle. Now back to the information. No rival claims disputed the succession. Ji-Fa observed 3 years of mourning for his father, then he moved. His chief strategist was Zhang Zia, also called Lu Shang, a man who would become legend. The signal came when Shang court musicians fled to Zhou carrying sacred instruments. This transferred cultural authority. Musical instruments held ritual power. Their flight meant heaven withdrew support from Shang. In 1046 BCE, King Wu mobilized 300 war chariots, 3,000 Huban, elite tiger guards, 45,000 armored infantry. Allied states sent 4,000 additional troops. Yong, Shu, Chang, Wu, Wei, Lu, Peng, and Pu. Total force approximately 52,000. Each chariot carried 3 men, driver and center, archer on left, spearman on right. 10 infantry accompanied each chariot during early Zhou period, though numbers varied. The army moved fast, dawn to dusk marches covering vast distances. Modern historians compare the march to later revolutionary campaigns. Rapid movement prevents enemy reorganization. The route followed ritual spaces, demonstrating both military and spiritual superiority. 70 li from the Shang capital, approximately 30 miles, lay the plain of Muye, near modern Kuli village in Xinjiang, Henan. King Wu stopped here. He addressed his troops. The speech survives in the Book of Documents, chapter Mu Shi, the oath at Muye. The rhetoric would echo for 3,000 years as the template for justified rebellion. Dixin has committed 10 crimes. He neglects sacrifices to ancestors. He trusts his wife Daji over family. He elevates criminals and foreigners. He ignores the council of elders. He drowns in wine and music. He builds palaces while people starve. Heaven has withdrawn its mandate. We are instruments of cosmic correction. This was more than military propaganda. This created the mandate of heaven doctrine. Rulers governed by divine approval. Virtue maintains approval. Vice forfeits it. Rebellion against tyrants is not treason, but heaven's will. The Zhou needed this. They were vassals attacking their overlord. Without divine sanction, they were rebels who would be executed in the cruelest ways Shang bronze workers could devise. With the mandate, they became heroes correcting cosmic imbalance. 44 different dates proposed by scholars ranging from 1130 to 1018 BCE. The Zhou Chronology Project, combining archaeological investigation with astronomical data, settled on 1046 BCE. The Ligui bronze vessel, excavated in March 1976 from a Western Zhou tomb in Lintong District, Shanxi, measures 28 centimeters high with mouth diameter 22 centimeters. Weight 7.95 kilograms. Inside, 32 characters in ancient script record that King Wu defeated Shang on the Jiazi day when the Sui star, Jupiter, was high in the sky. 7 days later, Xinwei Day, at the military camp at Jian, the king rewarded an official named Li with bronze. Li cast this vessel to honor his grandfather. This is the only epigraphic evidence giving the day of Zhou conquest. The inscription matches dates in the Yizhou Shu's Shifu chapter and the Book of Documents Mu Shi chapter. The vessel was transferred to the National Museum of China in Beijing. In 2002, it was listed among cultural artifacts prohibited from leaving Chinese soil. Jupiter's position that morning could be back calculated 1946 years before the Common Era, February 28th, 6 a.m. approximately when Jupiter reached highest point. This is when 45,000 men prepared to destroy an empire. Logistical constraints. Moving 700,000 soldiers requires feeding them. 2 pounds of grain per soldier per day minimum. 700,000 soldiers consuming 1,400,000 pounds of grain daily. Over 500 tons for 1 day. Transport this, store this, in Bronze Age, the numbers do not work. 50,000 to 70,000 is more realistic, but still formidable. Dixin's best troops fought in the southeast. He kept perhaps 30,000 regulars near the capital. To match Zhou numbers, he armed slaves, 170,000 according to later texts. More likely, 20 to 30,000. War captives. Many were Chong people, pastoralists from the northwest. Oracle bones refer to them as prisoners taken in military operations, conducted specifically to capture sacrificial victims. These people watched their families beheaded on Shang altars. They were fed vegetarian diets, no animal protein, kept for years before ritual use. Isotope analysis of sacrificial victim bones from Yinshu, published in Journal of Archaeological Science, 2017, confirms this. Long-term isotopic signatures different from short-term. They moved from elsewhere. Plant-based diet persisted years, long enough to register in bone growth. They lived as slaves awaiting death. Dixin armed them. He handed weapons to people who wanted him dead. He thought superior numbers would slow Zhou advance until reinforcements arrived from the eastern campaign. He was wrong. The speech at Mu, already delivered the night before. Far are you come, you men of the western regions. Shang troops assembled across Muye Plain. Formations like a forest, texts say. Catapults ready, chariots gleaming, teams of white-bellied horses. But morale was gone. Half the army were slaves who hated their masters. The other half were regulars who knew their king abandoned them while he fought southeastern campaigns for years. Zhou charged. Chariot shock tactics. 300 chariots moving in formation. Discipline held. Dezhou chariots stayed organized. The Shang chariots did not. Numerical superiority means nothing without unit cohesion. King Wu's chariot broke the Shang center line. Elite aristocratic troops held briefly. Then the slave soldiers dropped weapons. They turned. They joined Zhou. 20,000, 30,000. However many Dixin armed, most switched sides mid-battle. The regulars fought. They fought hard. Bronze weapons clashing. The Shiji records blood enough to float a log. Scholars debate if this is literal or metaphorical. If literal, how much blood floats a log? If metaphorical, it means slaughter beyond counting. Shang General Shang Fu flew like an eagle, says a poem in the Shijing. His troops collected like a forest in Muye wilderness. The chariots of sandalwood shone bright. The teams of bays, black-maned and white-bellied, galloped. At one onset, King Wu smote great Shang. One onset. The battle lasted hours, perhaps a full day, but the decisive blow came fast. King Wu's 300 chariots and 3,000 elite guards smashed through. The slave defection created gaps. Zhou infantry poured through, envelop, surround, cut down. His palace complex. He climbed to the Deer Terrace Pavilion, the tallest building. He dressed in his most valuable outfit, fancy jade jewelry. He covered himself with precious jades. He lit the structure on fire. He burned himself to death. This is recorded in multiple sources. The self-immolation matches patterns from earlier dynastic falls. King Jie of Xia, the last ruler before Shang, also fled and was captured. Dixin chose fire over capture. Whether this was courage or shame, we cannot say. His consort Daji was found and executed on Zhang Ziya's order. 2 more consorts committed suicide. Their heads were displayed on white flagpoles and red flagpoles. Dixin's head was cut from his burned corpse and mounted on a white flagpole for public viewing. This was Zhou justice. This was the mandate of heaven made visible. Minimal resistance. The Shang state shattered. Wu opened the imperial grain stores immediately. The population was starving. He released Shang officials without charge. Many later served Zhou administration. He installed Dixin's son, Wu Geng, as ruler of a vassal Shang state, capital still at the old location. Let them keep their rituals. Let them honor their ancestors. Just serve the new order. This was strategy. Sudden regime change breeds rebellion. Leave local systems in place? A decade later, Wu Geng rebelled anyway. He was killed in battle. His younger brother Weizi continued the house as Marquis of Song. The Shang royal family changed their surname from the ancestral Zi to Yin, the name of their fallen dynasty. They retained aristocratic standing and provided administrative services to Zhou for generations. King Wu lived only 3 more years after Muye. He died in 1043 BCE. His brother, the Duke of Zhou, served as regent for Wu's young son. The Duke formalized the mandate of heaven concept. He wrote it into Zhou philosophy. He ended human sacrifice. Within generations, mass human sacrifice vanished from Chinese civilization. It was so thoroughly erased that for 3,000 years it was forgotten. Only 20th century excavations at Yinshu rediscovered the truth. Scholar Li Shuo wrote in his book, published late 2023, which became an internet phenomenon in China, that the Zhou overthrow of Shang was more than regime change. It was civilization revolution. The end of an age ruled by gods demanding blood. The beginning of an age focused on humans and virtue. This is why Confucius, writing 500 years after Muye, praised King Wen endlessly in the Analects. What a splendid civilization. I am a follower of Zhou. Confucius understood. The Battle of Muye did not just change who sat on a throne, it changed what Chinese civilization believed about power, justice, and human worth. Archaeological evidence tells us what texts cannot. Excavations at Yinshu show no sudden destruction layer from 1046 BCE, no burn marks across the site, no collapsed structures, no mass weapon deposits. Analysis of terminal Shang layers indicates gradual depopulation, reduced elite activity. This contradicts the narrative of Zhou sacking the capital. The battle happened at Muye, 30 miles away. Dixin burned his own palace. King Wu installed a vassal ruler. The city transitioned administratively, not violently. Large-scale human sacrifice continued briefly under early Zhou. Oversight then stopped. Ritual practices shifted. Bronze production continued. Writing evolved. Oracle bone script transitioned to bronze inscriptions. The core Shang population remained. The Zhou were a smaller group, militarily superior and ideologically compelling, but numerically insufficient. To replace the entire Shang society, they co-opted it, married into Shang nobility, adopted Shang bureaucratic systems, claimed Shang cultural achievements as Chinese civilization. This is why Zhou lasted 800 years. They did not destroy Shang, they absorbed and redirected it. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Yinshu archaeological site Excavations, conducted continuously since 1928 under Li Ji. Published findings including the H127 pit discovery in 1936, containing over 17,000 oracle bone pieces, isotope analysis of sacrificial victim diets, published in the Journal of Archaeological. Science June 2017 by researchers at the Institute of Archaeology, Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and stratigraphic analysis from Yinshu period 4 layers, showing Bronze Age termination without catastrophic violence, as documented by the Institute of Archaeology Synthesis Volume, published 2004. Now back to the information. He enfeoffed 71 states to loyal kinsmen, military allies, and select Shang remnants, each state under hierarchical obligation to the Zhou sovereign. This emphasized kinship, ties, and ritual bonds over pure military control. Regional lords governed locally, they sent tribute, they provided troops for royal campaigns, they acknowledged Zhou as son of heaven. This system created the framework for Chinese political philosophy for the next 2,000 years. The capital moved from Haojing near modern Xi'an to Luoyang, considered the center of the known world. The Heizun bronze vessel, discovered in 1963 in Shanxi, carries an inscription stating the Zhou wished to conquer all under heaven and establish Zhongguo, the Middle Kingdom. These are the first known characters for China used as a state name. The Zhou no longer saw Luoyang as their eastern limit. It was the center of their new world. Decades of preparation. The battle was inevitable by 1046 BCE. Both sides knew it. The question was timing. King Wu waited for the heavenly sign. Jupiter rising, 5 planets gathering in the sky according to later astronomical records. Oracle bone inscriptions from Shang's final year's record Anxiety, strange omens. In Dixin's 10th regnal year, 5 stars aligned, meteor shower, earthquake. 29th year, mountain collapse at Q with landslide, winter disaster at Linsui. Records from later dynasties claim ice formed during summer mornings in the final year, frost through July. Whether these events occurred or were invented retrospectively to prove heaven withdrew support, we cannot determine. What matters is people believed them. Belief shapes action. If enough Shang nobles believed heaven turned against Daixin, they would not fight hard for him. Weizi fled. Bigan was killed for criticism. Jizi feigned madness and was imprisoned. The inner circle collapsed. No one trusted anyone. This is how dynasties end, not from external attack, but internal dissolution. But chariots were elite weapons. Bronze Age shock cavalry. Each chariot cost as much as 100 soldiers. Building one required master carpenters, bronze workers, leather workers, horse trainers. Only nobles rode them. The 3,000 elite guards were professional warriors, trained since youth, full bronze armor, dagger axes, spears, halberds. The 45,000 infantry were levies from Zhou heartland and allied territories. Farmers who fought seasonally, leather armor, bronze-tipped spears, shields. They provided mass and staying power. The key was integration. Zhou doctrine, developing over King Wen's reign, emphasized coordinating chariots and infantry as units. 1 chariot plus 30 infantrymen made a sheng, 10 sheng made a squad, 5 squads made a platoon. The chain continued upward. This gave flexible command structure. Shang forces separated chariots and infantry organizationally. Zhou merged them tactically. At Muye, this made the difference. When Zhou chariots broke through Shang lines, Zhou infantry immediately exploited gaps. Shang infantry could not respond without chariot coordination. Shang chariots lost formation. Without formation, chariots are just expensive targets. Every subsequent dynasty justified itself by claiming the mandate. Every rebellion justified itself by claiming the old dynasty forfeited it. The concept was not new. Earlier, rulers claimed divine approval, but Zhou formalized it into testable doctrine. Good governance maintains the mandate. Bad governance loses it. Signs of lost mandate include natural disasters, peasant suffering, official corruption, and foreign invasions. If these occur, rebellion is righteous. This is revolutionary. It made Chinese political philosophy fundamentally different from European divine right monarchy. European kings ruled by God's will regardless of competence. Chinese emperors ruled conditionally. Fail the people and heaven withdraws support. This produced 3,000 years of justified regime changes. The Ming overthrew the Yuan Mongols citing the mandate. The Qing Manchus overthrew the Ming citing the mandate. The Republic overthrew the Qing citing the mandate, though not in those words. Even communist revolutions drew on mandate thinking. Mao Zedong did not use the term, but the logic was identical. The old government failed the people. Heaven or history demands change. We are the instruments of cosmic justice. This all started at Muye when King Wu needed to justify attacking his overlord. Numbers in ancient battles are notoriously unreliable. Chronicles exaggerate to glorify victories or excuse defeats. 700,000 Shang troops is probably 10 times actual numbers. But even if we accept 50,000 Shang against 50,000 Zhou, why did Zhou win decisively? 3 factors. First, unit cohesion. Zhou troops were organized, drilled, confident. Shang troops were mixed regulars and armed slaves with terrible morale. Second, leadership. King Wu and Zhang Zia planned meticulously. Dixin was distracted by southeastern campaigns and internal opposition. Third, defection. The slave soldiers, switching sides mid-battle, destroyed Shang numerical advantage. Some sources say the slaves did not even wait for battle to start. They turned their weapons backward, reversed their spears, and marched toward Zhou lines. If this is accurate, Dixin lost 170,000 troops, without Zhou killing a single one. The battle became 45,000 disciplined Zhou against 30,000 demoralized Shang regulars. The outcome was inevitable. He could have enslaved Shang nobles. He did not. Instead, he practiced what would become a Zhou governance model: maintain local customs, co-opt local elites, absorb rather than destroy. This was not mercy, this was strategy. The Zhou controlled the Wei River Valley. They just conquered the Central Plains. They needed Shang administrators who knew how to run irrigation systems, collect taxes, maintain granaries. They needed Shang bronze workers who knew advanced casting techniques. They needed Shang scribes who understood oracle bone writing, even though Zhou would transition to bronze inscriptions. Total destruction would have left Zhou ruling ruins. Selective absorption let them rule civilization. This pattern repeated throughout Chinese history. Conquerors who tried to destroy everything failed. Conquerors who absorbed systems succeeded. The Mongol Yuan dynasty tried to rule as Mongols. They lasted 90 years. The Manchu Qing dynasty adopted Chinese systems. They lasted 277 years. King Wu understood this in 1046 BCE. Mao, spears, bronze points on long shafts. Crossbows did not exist yet. Bows were composite recurve, arrows with bronze points. Armor was bronze scale over leather or just hardened leather. Shields were wood or woven reeds covered in leather. Shang metallurgy was advanced. They produced some of the finest bronze work in the ancient world. Bronze vessels from Shang tombs show mastery of piece mold casting. Lady Fu Hao's tomb held a bronze Yue battle axe weighing 9 kilograms. That is 20 pounds. Weapons that heavy were ceremonial or for extraordinarily strong warriors. Most combat axes weighed 2 to 3 kilograms. Shang bronze was 70% copper, 30% tin approximately. This ratio produces hardness while remaining castable. Zhou inherited this technology and improved it incrementally. By Middle Zhou, bronze swords appeared. Earlier periods used bronze daggers and GE. The sword is more complex to cast, requires better metallurgy. This suggests continuous technological development across the Shang-Zhou transition. A log weighing 50 kilograms would need significant water displacement to float. Blood is denser than water. You would need more volume. If 10,000 soldiers died at Muye and each lost 4 liters of blood, that is 40,000 liters, 40 cubic meters. In a confined area, this could theoretically create a pool, but battlefields are not confined. Blood soaks into earth. It does not pool unless on hard clay or stone. The description is probably metaphorical, meaning slaughter. So great blood flowed like rivers. Chinese historical texts use vivid imagery to convey scale. Corpses piled like mountains. Blood-floated logs. These are literary devices, not engineering reports. What we know factually is many Shang soldiers died. The remaining Shang military capacity was destroyed. King Wu spent the next 3 years consolidating conquered territory with minimal additional fighting. The battle broke Shang power permanently. Then in one morning they lost everything. The gods did not save them. The oracle bones gave no warning. Dixin burned in his own palace. His head was displayed on a pole. If you were a Shang noble who survived, what do you believe now? Your entire worldview collapsed. Either the gods never existed and 5 centuries of sacrifice were murder, or the gods did exist and they chose Zhou. Both options destroy your faith. This is why the Duke of Zhou's ideological work mattered. He gave Shang survivors a framework to understand their defeat. The mandate of heaven was real. Your dynasty simply lost it through Dixin's poor governance. Join the new order, and you can still honor your ancestors. Still participate in governance. Just acknowledge that heaven chose new rulers. Many accepted this, others did not. Wu Geng rebelled 10 years later precisely because he rejected the mandate narrative. He saw Zhou as usurpers who needed to be destroyed. He failed and died. The mandate framework won. Crumbling borders. The fact that so many nobles defected before battle suggests internal dissolution was already advanced. King Wu might have been pushing on an already open door. The battle narrative as one-day shock conquest might be Zhou propaganda exaggerating their military prowess to legitimize rule. Archaeological evidence cannot resolve this. We have no battlefield site excavated with weapon concentrations and skeleton arrangements to confirm single-day engagement. What we have is unanimous textual tradition saying Muye was decisive, and date-specific inscription on Li Gui saying Jiazi Day. Whether that day was the culmination of long decay or a sudden shock, the result was identical. Shang ended. Zhou began. Chinese civilization entered 800 years under one dynasty. The number 45,000 appears in multiple independent sources for Zhou troop strength, records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian, the Yi Zhoushu's Shifu chapter, the Xijing poems. The consistency suggests accuracy. Bronze Age armies rarely exceeded 50 to 70,000. Logistics prohibited it. Feeding and moving larger forces was impractical before industrial agriculture. Even Rome at its height struggled to field armies over 60,000 for sustained campaigns. The Shang figure of 130,000 or 170,000 armed slaves plus regulars totaling 700,000 is clearly inflated. No Bronze Age state could field that many. What matters is Zhou faced numerically superior force and won through better organization, morale, and tactics. Smaller disciplined armies defeating larger undisciplined forces is a historical pattern. Romans defeated Gauls, Macedonians defeated Persians, Spanish conquered Aztecs. Discipline and cohesion beats numbers. The Duke of Zhou was honored as consolidator. Each received specific temple sacrifices. The Zhou king performed rituals acknowledging he ruled by mandate, not by right. He could lose the mandate if he failed. This kept later Zhou kings somewhat accountable. Not perfectly. The dynasty eventually declined through corruption and incompetence. But the framework existed to criticize bad rulers. Confucius, 500 years later, would draw heavily on early Zhou as the Golden Age. His ideal government was Zhou under Wen, Wu, and the Duke. He wanted to restore that system. He believed the mandate concept provided moral governance. If rulers knew heaven watched and would withdraw support for failure, they would govern virtuously. This was naive. Humans are humans. But the concept influenced Chinese political philosophy more than any other single idea. Bronze casting techniques developed by Shang and refined by Zhou enabled iron working when iron ores were exploited centuries later. The administrative systems established post-Muye, including the Fengjian feudalism, lasted through Western Zhou, adapted during Eastern Zhou, and influenced every subsequent dynasty's provincial government structure. The Mandate of Heaven philosophy justified the Qin unification in 221 BCE, the Han, establishment in 206 BCE, and every dynastic transition thereafter. The writing system that began on Shang oracle bones evolved through Zhou bronze inscriptions into seal script, clerical script, and modern Chinese characters. Archaeologists can trace specific graphs from Yinshu oracle bones through 3,000 years to contemporary Chinese. The battle was one day. The consequences lasted millennia. One final detail that haunts the site. Modern Anyang, built over ancient Yinshu, has been excavated continuously since 1928. The royal cemetery in the western wing held 8 ramped royal tombs, 1 unfinished large tomb. The eastern wing held additional royal burials. Surrounding these, over 2,500 sacrificial pits, arranged in grids. Most pits held 10 to 12 bodies, some held dozens. Victims were predominantly male, aged 15 to 35. They were decapitated. Some had hands bound behind backs before skull was bashed. Some were boiled after decapitation, bronze vessels found with cooked human remains. Oracle bone inscriptions describe this matter of factly: captured 50 Chang, sacrificed 30, saved 20 for next ceremony. These are not myths, these are administrative records. The Duke of Zhou ended this. Not immediately, gradually, but deliberately. Within 2 generations after Muye, mass human sacrifice vanished. The archaeological record confirms it. Burial pits at early Zhou sites contain animal sacrifices, not human. Elite tombs include symbolic grave goods, not murdered servants. This change, triggered by the Battle of Muye and the Zhou ideological revolution, represents one of history's great moral shifts. A civilization that normalized killing hundreds at a time for 15 generations suddenly stopped. The mandate of heaven required virtue. Virtue did not include butchering captives on altar stones. This is why Chinese civilization, despite endless wars and cruelties over 3,000 years, never returned to mass human sacrifice. The Zhou decision at the moment of victory in 1046 BCE established a precedent that held. 2 bronze vessels tell the story. The Ligui, 28 centimeters tall, excavated 1976, holds 32 characters inside, describing King Wu defeating Shang when Jupiter was high. The Heizun, found 1963, 38.8 centimeters tall, records King Wu's instruction to build the new capital at Luoyang, center of the Middle Kingdom. Both vessels date to King Wu's reign. Both survived 3,000 years, both set in tombs while dynasties rose and fell, while Confucius taught, while the Qin unified, while the Han expanded, while the Tang flourished, while the Song invented printing, while the Mongols invaded, while the Ming built the Forbidden City, while the Qing ended, while the Republic formed, while the People's Republic rose. These vessels witnessed Chinese civilization evolve from Bronze Age kingdom to nuclear power. They hold the words of men who died 3 millennia ago, men who fought at Muye when Jupiter climbed high, and 45,000 warriors destroyed 130,000. The vessels do not care about the mandate of heaven. They do not care about human sacrifice. They are bronze, but they remember. And we, holding them in climate-controlled museum cases, reading their inscriptions with modern tools, remember through them. It happened in one morning on a plain near modern Xinjiang, when a smaller disciplined force shattered a larger demoralized force because heaven, or strategy, or luck, chose that moment for history to pivot. King Dixin burned in his palace. King Wu entered the capital. The Ligui was cast 7 days later when the king rewarded an official named Li with bronze for service at Muye. Li made the bronze into a ritual vessel to honor his grandfather. The vessel sits now in Beijing. The battle is remembered. The mandate persists, evolved into modern concepts of governmental legitimacy requiring public approval. The sacrifice ended. 45,000 warriors did not just destroy 130,000 soldiers. They destroyed a world and built another. The ruins of Yin, final capital of Shang, where oracle bones revealed 3,000-year-old words, where sacrificial pits held thousands of decapitated bodies, where bronze foundries produced masterpieces, where Lady Fu Hao commanded armies then rested with 1,900 burial objects. The site is open to public access. You can walk where Shang kings walked. You can see palace foundations. You can visit reconstructed tombs. What you cannot see is battlefield at Muye. It sits under modern development 30 miles away. No excavation identified weapon concentrations, or chariot remains, or mass graves. Agricultural land covers it. The battle happened there. The texts are unanimous. The Ligui confirms the date, but 3,000 years of farming erased the evidence. Only the vessels remain. Only the words remain. Only the consequences remain. A civilization that believed gods demanded blood, learned gods preferred virtue. A dynasty that ruled by ancestors learned they ruled by heaven. A battle that lasted hours changed 3 millennia. This is history. This is Muye. This is how 45,000 Zhou warriors destroyed 130,000 Shang on the morning Jupiter rose highest, February 28, 1046 BCE, when the mandate of heaven itself changed hands.